Hello, friends. Do you know what day it is? It is time for another Conversation for Good with Briggs. Welcome, Briggs.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back.
Well, let's assume all of our friends listen to us week after week after week, and they just love this podcast and can't get enough of it. But if we have a brand new friend, which we love brand new friends also, let's just quickly tell them who you are and maybe who I am, because if they're brand new, they don't know who either of us are. So I'm Corinne, and I started this podcast because I know that getting organized is the fast track to a good life. And I run an in-person organizing business and an online organizing membership. And Briggs is the number 2 in our company. She is the COO. She is the head of HR. She is also one of my closest, dearest friends. I adore her to pieces. And we met in grad school. So we've got a long history. I know we look so young. If you're watching on YouTube, especially, we're not as young as we look. We go back a long time.
Yes. Yeah. I think we had a date in, Cambridge Square or Harvard Square. Which one is it called?
I don't know. Where did we go to school, Briggs?
I don't remember.
Little school in Cambridge. Anyway, go on.
Yes. And then we became friends then. And then you've kind of pulled me into your projects since then, which I have totally loved because I'm always available for any extra Corinne time. And so I started here at Grit and Glam before it was Grit and Glam, right? Yeah. We started chatting about it. And then my role has just kind of grown since then. And we started in 2018.
Yeah.
So it's almost 7 years now.
A long time.
Math is right.
Isn't it wild that this just started before it wasn't even a thing? It was just an idea in my head first and then in your head. And then we turned it into this whole thing, which this is not at all what this episode is about.
But it's interesting. I think it's so true.
It is.
And I think when you come to roughly our ages, which is mid-40s-ish, like you start thinking about what else could I do with my time, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I think that does kind of tie in, since we're going to talk a little bit about being less distracted potentially, or enjoying how much you are distracted by your phone, and thinking about what else you could do with your time if you weren't on your phone as much.
Exactly. So that is a good segue into what this episode is all about. So today we are going to be talking about how we keep our kids off screens. So for a little bit of context, my kids are 14 and 11. Briggs, how old are your kids?
Mine are 7 and 9.
Okay. So we really span not too wide of a gap, but between 7 and 14. But we've also had our kids since they were babies. So we're talking about them now, but also what we've done with them throughout the years. And I think all parents have a love-hate relationship with screens. They are so helpful in so many ways, especially when our kids are younger. And as our kids get older, it really takes on a different significance, not only because devices themselves have evolved, but because our kids have more autonomy and what they can access also evolves. And so we thought it would be really interesting and helpful to have a judgment-free, guilt-free chat about how we view screens, what our rules are, and any advice that we have.
Yeah, like you're saying, when they were younger, the technology was a little bit less. And also their use of it was much less. And as they've gotten older, we're becoming more and more reliant upon it as adults, but then also as our kids will too, as they get older and older, because the technology is evolving. And so in order to do anything, you have to have a phone, which is a little disappointing.
It is.
It also brings me to this other point that I wanted to make this, I think ties in, which is we are the generation who did not have smartphones growing up, but now have kids with smartphones. So the generation after us, those folks in their 20s who may be having kids now or going to soon, they had that experience. And they know I did not like having an iPhone when I was 11. It opened up too many doors that I was not ready to have opened yet. So I am going to restrict my kid until they are whatever age they felt in their own experience it would have been best for them, right? Or vice versa. All of my friends had phones by the age of 10, and I didn't get one till 14, and I felt so left out, and it made me so sad. So whenever my kids' friends have phones, that's when my kid is going to get a phone, right? So they have that sort of advantage, I think, of their own life experience and growing up with or without phones and knowing what worked and did not work for them. Whereas we don't, because I didn't get my first smartphone until 25, something like that.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, I was... Oh, first smartphone. Well, I didn't even get a cell phone until I was 22 years old. I had graduated from college and I was working on Wall Street. That's when I got my first phone. I was 22. And I got my first smartphone when, I don't know, several years after that.
Yeah. There's a big gap for me too. Yeah. You're doing all of that cell phone. You're like tapping 4 times to get to D.
To get a leg, exactly.
To text somebody.
Exactly.
Took forever. And yet we chose to text people. Why? Just call them.
Yeah.
If it's that much work to text someone, just leave them a voicemail.
It's so true. But no, it is so interesting. We're not bringing our own experience to our kids' experience. And so we're relying on data. We're relying on conversations with our friends, and we're relying on our instincts. So Briggs and I thought we would frame this conversation just by asking each other the same question and seeing our answers. We have not discussed our answers beforehand. I mean, we're friends, so some of this we know, but I think it'll just be interesting to see where we go with this. So the first question is, what age did your kids start on screen? You know what? First, before we ask that one, I actually want to ask the second question first, which is, do you distinguish between different kinds of screens in your household? iPhones, iPads, TV, video games. Is there a distinction in your household?
No, which I know is different for you. We should actually answer for each other, because I think I know all of your answers. But no, we don't distinguish here. They usually defer to watching TV. So I'll say to them, okay, you have screen time. You can use a tablet. You can watch something on TV. What do you want to watch? And usually they agree on some TV show.
Interesting. In our household, we do distinguish it because it's a bit more nuanced for my kids. I find that when they are watching TV, and when I say TV, it's a show. It's not like watching YouTube shorts on the TV where it's something that engages their mind for a bit longer. They get less of that angstiness or that like constant input and adrenaline that they would get from being on the phone, for example. So I am more lenient with TV, and my daughter doesn't really play video games. My son does. And for him, they've become very social. So I also distinguish with video games because he is talking to his friends through like a microphone headset when he's playing. Whereas the phones, I think, are just horrible. So I guess we're kind of going a little bit sort of out of order, but I will say what my kids have on their phone. So my daughter, who just turned 11, she has a phone. It is a smartphone. It's an old smartphone of ours, but it is all she can do on it is call and text and FaceTime. She does have like the Audible app and some meditation apps, but she can't search the web. She can't get on YouTube. She can't, obviously no social media, nothing like that. But even still, when she's on her phone, it's a very different experience than when she's sitting watching TV. So for us, we distinguish it. My son, who's 14, has Snapchat. Because that's how he communicates with his friends. And we allowed him to have Instagram when he turned 13, which is the legal age you have to be to get Instagram. He does not have TikTok. We won't allow it. I'm sure he has YouTube on his phone. So for him, when he's on his phone, it's these little bursts of like, he's watching this little video on Snapchat or he's watching this Instagram reel, which is so, so bad for attention spans. So that is why we distinguish. I'm curious why you don't distinguish in your household.
Yeah, so they don't have phones yet. I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? They're 7 and they're 9. Not a lot. Some of my daughter, who is the 9-year-old, some of her friends do have phones, but she does not. And the majority don't. So it's not like a thing. She used to ask for it all the time, but she's like, you have to wait till you're 14. That's our current plan, but I'm not, we'll see. We'll see how things evolve. And so I think it's just because if they usually just go with the TV and they get along really well doing that. They can usually find something that they both love to watch. And then it is sort of social, I guess, because they're together and they're laughing. They'll look at each other and laugh or make a joke. And then it's like they're bonding. But if they want to go on their tablets, they don't have that much on their tablets. And What they do have is just movies and a couple of video games. They don't like the video games. They're not the best, it's like low quality video games. And the movies are basically the same movies we have on the TV. So great. You can use your tablet if you guys can't agree, basically. Or if Dad and I, we want to watch something on TV, then you guys can use your tablets instead. Unless you want to watch what we're watching. We'll watch something that they could watch if they wanted to, and not some true crime or something.
Got it. So you said your kids don't have phones. So what age did your kids start on screens in general?
Yeah. So I think very young. So my daughter was roughly 2 when I had my son, right? Since they're 2 years apart. And I was home with them towards the end of my pregnancy, especially because I was bedridden, quote unquote, like partially bedridden. So I couldn't go to work. I had to work from home or whatever. And so when she was home from daycare, I was so tired. I had nothing to give and I was supposed to be laying around. So, what's her default? Put her in front of a screen. So there's a lot of Daniel Tiger. She loved that. And I thought this is maybe kind of good for her. And it's not that's what I told myself at the time, right? It's not like you're saying with some of the more short clip things that destroy your attention span. Daniel Tiger at least had much longer scenes. They're looking at one image of Daniel Tiger for, 12 seconds instead of just flashing lights at you. So she did a lot of that.
Yeah. And it's making me think about, I don't know in your household growing up, but like there were no rules on TV growing up, but I felt like a lot of the programming we watched when we were younger was so educational. Like we learned a lot from Sesame Street and shows like that. And I grew up in a no limit TV household and I don't really like watching TV. So I think that is part of what informed me not being super strict around rules around TV because I'm just not a TV addict. So I don't worry about my kids becoming super addicted. But so that's making me think back. So when my son was little, we could not get him to watch TV. I would hear about all these parents whose kids would just sit quietly in front of the TV. And I was like, for the love of all things holy, will you please just watch a freaking TV show? Yeah. And he just wouldn't for the first few years. Until we finally found some educational programming that he enjoyed, like Wild Kratts and things where he would be super engaged and learn. I would say it was till he was about 5 that he was just not interested in watching TV. And that was painful. It was. Yeah. And newsflash, didn't make him any less interested in his phone now that he has one. So it did nothing good for him either. And then on the flip side, my daughter did start watching TV much earlier. She had the attention span. She would just sit and watch. And I enjoyed that. It would, they always say the TV is like the built-in babysitter. And it is true. It is true.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So when I would get in points, and after my son was born too, I would also still be very, very tired, right? He did not sleep. So I did not sleep. So same thing, like she would just watch TV and he was too young, his first year to care at all. And I didn't want him to see the flashing lights or whatever. So I'd set him in there and have him facing away from it. And he was just as happy as if he was looking at it. Right. But he started watching whenever he was available since I think this is the thing too, your older sibling introduces you to things more quickly than you otherwise would, right? So I assume by 1-ish, he was watching every once in a while. I really, really try to limit it, but I just think sometimes it's your own mental, physical well-being that has to count more than as however much TV they have to watch. Along those same lines, I had COVID a couple years ago. So the kids were, older than infants and toddlers. How old were they? 3 and 5. And, my husband was in Hawaii and I was at home with them with COVID and I could not function. So they would get up in the morning, they would go downstairs, feed themselves something, mostly popcorn. My daughter figured out how to make popcorn in the microwave. And then they would watch TV until like 3. I would come down at some point after that. I was just laying in bed. Like I would ask them to bring me something to eat and I would just lay in bed until 3. So they watched TV from 6 a.m. until 3 p.m. when I finally had enough energy to move. And then I would make them go sit outside and set up the slip and slide. So they just would be out slip and sliding for an hour or 2. And I sat and watched them miserably inside in a chair somewhere. and then I put them back on the TV
Yeah.
and then lay down some more. So when people be sick, including me or them, when they're sick, when I was a kid and I got sick, we just mostly watched TV.
Yeah.
We basically do that too, but they still, as we've talked about, you mentioned just briefly, they can get very irritable when they watch too much TV, right?
They can, yes.
So even when they're sick, I make them read for at least a few hours before we turn on the TV.
Yeah, so that's a good segue into a conversation around limits. So do you have time limits or other limits for your kids' screen time consumption?
I do. So generally, now that they are 7 and 9, we have, during the week, they just don't watch any TV. They're not on their tablets. There's no screen time during the week. And it's partially because we're very busy, right? They get home from school, do their homework, have a lot of snacks because they're very hungry for whatever reason from school. Schools does not provide enough snacks. And then we go to an activity. They have an activity every day. So there's just, we couldn't fit it in if we wanted to, unless they wanted to skip their homework,
That's interesting you say that, because I found particularly, I think actually with both of my kids, I am not someone who likes to overschedule, but I did find us signing the kids up for more activities than I would otherwise want to, because the alternative was them wanting to be on their screens. So it's just this crazy cycle. So in our house, we've never actually really had time limits. I'm trying to think. Have we had time limits? Not that I can recall. If we have, it was so long ago. Our limits are really around sort of other things getting accomplished first. So in other words, kids have to get their homework done first. They have to get their reading done. But then truthfully, and judgment-free zone, once everything else is done that needs to get done, I actually don't mind how long my kids watch TV or for my son play video games. My daughter isn't really on her phone much because there's just not that much to do on it. So for her, it's really more around TV. And for my son, it's playing video games. But I will let them do it up until I do really insist. It's not a rule, but like for their own well-being, and they've adopted it, that they get off screens a certain amount of time before they're going to sleep so that they can wind down, so that their brains can unwind and that they can have a good night's sleep. But I'm pretty lax about it. Like if one of my kids got home from school on a day that they didn't have an activity, which is rare because most days there are activities, but they had no activity and no homework, they could potentially watch TV for a couple hours and I would be fine with it. Unless I would see them starting to get irritable or cranky. And I'm like, you got to turn off the TV and go for a walk around the block. And because I think my kids appreciate, they are aware that that we're pretty lenient with their screen time, they get it. If we're like, you got to get up, you got to go walk around the block, whatever, they'll listen without too much grumbling. And I have found that really works for us. The one time limit, now that I'm talking, that I think about is my daughter, I think through her friends, somehow found out about, it's like YouTube Shorts, which is basically like TikTok videos you can watch on YouTube. So if she requests to watch that, we will give her a time limit of like 15 minutes, because I just think those are the parts of screen time that are so detrimental to attention span. And it's not just our kids, Briggs. Like we talk about this in the business all the time as we're putting content out there for social media or, whatever it might be. Adults' attention span is diminishing and diminishing and diminishing. And it's not our fault, right? We're given all of this content that switches every few seconds. Like it's impossible to combat that. But it's even more important for us to flex the muscle of increasing our attention spans when everything is working to derail us in that area.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, we have so many opportunities to just check out from whatever you're doing, right? And it's hard to resist that. And I want to talk about that too, but I want to talk a little bit more about the limits thing, because I had a fun thing going on this summer with the kids. So as I discussed last time, I like to teach them things, including math. And so every summer we've done a homeschool curriculum. And if they finish their homeschool, every half an hour of homeschool gets them a point. And if they get 25 points during the week, then they get screen time, at least 2 hours on the weekend. So same thing, even in the summer, they don't go to camp. They don't do anything except swim team. And so there's a lot of free time, but we still don't do screens during the week. Just because I don't know, I think it's a nice habit to be in, but then I also can't, right?
Right.
The right limitations or whatever. And so we do the homeschooling together. Sometimes they do it on their own too while I'm working and all that kind of thing. And then I'll make them do math with me for at least 30 minutes every day. And then they earn at least 2 hours of screen time on the weekends. But usually, and like you're saying, my kids know this too, that usually they get more than that, like much more. But usually, and again, towards the end of the day. So like after 4 p.m., go for it. Watch TV all night, right? Both days. So that was good for us this summer.
Yeah.
But the other thing, instead what they do, so they're not, I don't know, playing happily together necessarily the whole time when we're not doing homeschool or at swim. But what they do instead is they listen to audiobooks, primarily Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So they together will sit in either my daughter's room or the sunroom and just listen to it for hours and hours and hours. I'll often catch them reading a different book while they're listening to Harry Potter. So it's just kind of like a soothing background sound for some of it, right? When the story gets a little slow or et cetera, because they've listened to all of the books several times now because they've been doing this for, a year or two. So it's not like they're not being entertained. They're being entertained most of the time. It's just it's an audiobook instead of a screen.
And it's so interesting how I think our parenting preferences and sort of personality impacts our screen time for our kids, because you are, I don't want to say more engaged with your kids, but like you enjoy teaching them and doing things. I do not. And I do not like playing with my kids. So I definitely am more lenient during the week with screens than I was when my kids were younger, because I didn't want to play with them. The alternative was me, because like one of my kids is better than the other, but neither of them are so amazing at independent play, or one of them is, but like, has a time limit on it. So they'd come to me to entertain them. And I'm like, no, that is not happening, children. So just go watch TV. So it certainly is born out of convenience.
Right.
And yet, though, even though it is out of convenience, it doesn't misalign with any values that I have, because I don't see it having negative impacts on watching TV anyway. If I did, then I would be stricter about it. It's not just because of convenience, but that really is the framework. And so for anyone listening, you got to do what you got to do, friends. You got to right? Yeah. It's just.
And I would say that, like you're saying, going back to that episode you did about mom types, like you're much more focused on teaching them like life skills and chores. Whereas I revealed in the last podcast episode that falls off the rails for me all the time. But my priority is teaching them math, because that's something that I wish I had been taught better as a kid. So I'm forcing them to live vicariously. I'm living vicariously through them. Now you guys know a ton of math. You're welcome.
Right.
Whether they like it or not.
Well, it won't not be useful to them. Everyone uses math all day long. So it's so interesting. So are there other rules outside of time constraints that you have when it comes to devices?
I don't think so. Not for the kids.
Right, because they're little. So which is what I alluded to before. My son, who's 14, is the only one of his friends who does not have TikTok, which I want to have a conversation with all these other parents. Like, what are you doing? There's so much research that shows how bad it is. And, we're not super strict in our household, right? Like I just said, we really don't have like super crazy limits, but TikTok is a hard no for us. Like there's so much research about how bad it is for your brains, but also the toxic content the algorithm there is so strong and so good that you spend an extra half a second on a piece of content and then that's all you see in your feed. And it's so hard to switch up the algorithm. And it's more so my husband feels super, super strongly. He reads a lot of just more academic articles and journals, more for work. He works in finance. So it's really in the context of that, but he just has forwarded on to me a ton of research. So we are very strict around that, which is unusual because all of my son's friends have it. And, my daughter doesn't have access to any social media yet, but we'll be super strict because the research around that for girls is even worse. Oh, I never answered the question when my kids got phones. I think it will be helpful to know. So for me, again, it's very situational. And I think that's the context of this whole conversation is you need to do what works for you. So I would have liked to have waited as long as possible for my kids to get phones. But I mean, again, no judgment, friends, but so much of the parenting we do is born out of our own anxieties or our own neuroses or our own, like, wanting our kids to live vicariously through us. So my kids went to an independent school that was 17 miles from my house on the highway, which 17 miles doesn't sound far, but it was far. It was like a 45-minute drive. And during COVID, my anxiety really, really spiked for a number of reasons, unrelated to COVID. I wasn't worried about health or COVID stuff, but I was feeling super anxious. And it was around that time that I did get my son a phone because he was so far away and there were these school shootings and I just wanted to be able to get in touch with him. So I think he got his phone when he was going into 6th grade, I think. And then we let him get Snapchat going into 7th grade because he'd switched to the public school then. And that's how all kids communicated, was they don't text. It was just via Snapchat. So we did not feel super comfortable with it, but we also, like, he was going to a new school. He wanted to make friends, and that's been totally fine. So my daughter, so when he switched schools and she was still going to the school, we ended up giving her an old phone of ours when she was in 4th grade, which is so young to have a phone. But I did it because I wanted to be able to contact her. And again, it was a smartphone, but with nothing smart on it. It was just phone and texting. But I recognize that that's very young. But now that she's in 6th grade, she's had her phone for a couple of years. She's asking about Snapchat, social media. I'm like, we're not budging on those. Just because you got your phone earlier doesn't mean you're going to get these other things earlier. So I gave both of my kids phones earlier than I would have because of my own anxiety and logistical reasons. And then my daughter was even earlier than my son because, again, I wanted to be able to keep in touch with her. So you got to do what you have to do. But because they have phones, our big thing is social media and having a lot of really strong boundaries and rules around that. And we just will not budge on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And like you're saying, it depends on what your priorities are and what makes you feel safe and comfortable and like what you want your kids to have. And it goes back to this idea of, like, when your first child gets something, the second one's probably going to get it a little bit earlier. I'm sure that'll be the case. And my older child will be really mad that my younger kid gets whatever before she got it. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. As the firstborn, you have a lot of advantages too, right?
Yes, this is true. Right.
Yeah. There's pros and cons to both situations that you're in.
Yeah. And I'm lucky that my son's favorite person in the whole world is his sister. And so he actually doesn't have he doesn't have those resentments towards her. He'll just channel them towards us, which is as it should be, it should be. So are you and your hubby on the same page when it comes to screen time and consumption of screens?
Yeah, I think so. It's very simple for now, I think.
Yeah.
I think it'll get more complex as we address these other questions. But he agrees to push it off as long as we can. He's not on his phone. When they were younger, I think we both needed just more mental breaks from it all. So we did a lot more phone time. And they didn't notice as much because they were toddlers and playing with whatever. But now that they're older and noticing, we've had conversations about, like, we need to not be on it, Because the thing with phones, which you alluded to again at the beginning, is that it's like everything is on your phone. So you can do something really good on your phone, right? Schedule in all of your appointments or get back to someone who's waiting for you to get back to them. Or, like, you can be very productive and feel this good. I checked off my list, all the things, and I did that by being on my phone. Then there's two things to that. And the other thing is that, there's just other things that you can get on when you're on there. But the other piece of it is, and this is the other thing I wanted to mention, is that I've noticed, and I'm sure other people do this too, it's like I check my phone because I'm waiting for something in order to get something off of my list, right? So I'm waiting for Corinne to box me back. I'm waiting for my husband to text me this. I'm waiting for the soccer coach to let me know when the next game is. So I go on my phone to check for that, and it's not there. So then I think I need to do something productive.
Right.
And no one is messaging me. I'm not getting any input from the places I'm wanting it from. So I'm going to find it myself and go on Instagram. And then you're getting this input. And then you forget what you're doing after 30 minutes. Yeah, right? I think that's often what happens. I'm not trying to. I just feel like I need to be productive. I'm not getting the messages to me that I'm wanting right now. but Instagram will send me messages that I'm wanting because it's fun, right? So I've taken Instagram off of my phone.
Oh, interesting.
As of Sunday, which has been excellent.
Interesting.
Yes. Because I realize I only need it for work.
Yes.
So I can log in on my computer when I'm working.
Oh, interesting. Similarly.
Yeah.
So I did not understand the TikTok craze in terms of like it sucking you in, it being worse than Instagram. Like I couldn't get into it. I just couldn't get into it. But we have it for work, right? Our assistant uploads any reels onto TikTok, and every now and then I have to go on there to respond to something in a video. So I somehow found myself spending more and more time on TikTok. And I was like, oh my God, I went down the freaking rabbit hole. And I'm like, now I get it. So I deleted it off my phone because I'm like, I don't need this. Like I literally just don't need it. And then of course that the next day I had to go on to respond to something for work. And so then it was annoying to have to re-upload it. So what I did for TikTok, I don't have to do this for Instagram because I actually am not super compelled by being on Instagram. I don't know why, but I set a time limit for myself on TikTok. It's 15 minutes a day, and I try not to use all of that up. But if you are finding yourself, like you said, you don't even realize what you're doing, or you're going on your phone to do something else, then you get sucked in. If that's you and you find that you're wasting your time or your days away, set a time limit. And just think about if we as adults are finding ourselves in this situation, just think about our kids' brains and how hard it is for them to regulate that. Another thing I wanted to say that made me think about Briggs is, because I do so much work on my phone, but like our kids don't know what we're doing on their phone. So if I'm checking my phone, something work related, they don't know that I'm doing that versus scrolling Instagram. And so I have had some conversations with them around like if I need to pick up my phone to do something work related, but I have also gotten in the habit of putting my phone in a different room when I am with them because it is too tempting to pick it up and check. So like last night at dinner, I left my phone upstairs in my bathroom, like in the bathroom in my bedroom. I'm like, I just don't want it anywhere near me. And then it was my daughter's birthday, so I couldn't take a picture of her because I didn't have my phone down there, right? But I'm like, I need to keep it away from me so that I'm modeling for my kids that like we don't always need to have our phones next to us. So speaking of that, and we can sort of round out the conversation with this, what are the types of conversations you have with your kids about screens? If at all.
Yeah, not too much. They have only just a little bit started pestering me, like, why are you on your phone? And I'll say, like you're saying, I'm getting this done. Like I need to schedule this in, and I just got the message, so I'm doing that right now. But yeah, we haven't talked much about it. How about you? Yeah.
So I think the real conversations come around social media, but also it's not just that, but it's also your digital footprint. Like anything, we always tell our kids repeatedly, anything you text to your friends can be screenshot and shared around to anyone else. So same thing with emails, right? But it's being very conscientious of your digital footprint and what you're writing, what you're putting out there, because it could be seen by your employer 15 years from now. Like it doesn't go away. Delete does not delete it. Yeah. And so continually having conversations around what you're putting out there, and also obviously safety in terms of being in touch with strangers. Even for my son playing video games, he has settings that he can't. Oh, now it's different because he's 14, but when he was younger, he could only correspond with his friends on the video games, right? Just making sure that any parental settings that need to be on there are set. I have it on both of my kids' phones. I do have screen time limits. Oh, that's funny. I said I didn't have time limits, but now that I think about it, I do have a screen time limit on my son's phone. It's 2 hours, but he never uses that limit. I totally forgot that. But yeah, so if let's say we're on vacation and he's on his phone for longer than that because there's nothing else to do, he has to come to me with his phone for me to put in a password to extend the time limit. Totally forgot about that. He has, and some things are not on those limits, right? Like Spotify or texting or phone. Like there are things that you can exclude from the limits that he can have access to at all times. Because I want him to be able to listen to music or whatever. But
yeah, and didn't he do Duolingo for a while too? Or
he did, and my daughter does Duolingo also. They both are into learning languages. So there are educational things they can do on their phones. But so we do try to have a lot of conversations, and then also the conversation around like sometimes I'm on my phone because I'm doing something for work. It's not pleasure, but like also really modeling for them that like, even if it's work, it's not something that needs to be done at 7:00 at night. Like, just
Yeah.
go back to it.
Yeah.
So there are two pieces of research that I want to just quickly share. One is that even if you're turning your phone off at night, it is so detrimental to have it next to you because it is the temptation to check is there. And that temptation, even when we're sleeping, can impact our sleep. So that is something super powerful to think about for yourself and for your kids. But also, and this is something that I think is really powerful to end on, research has repeatedly shown that if you ask kids their preference on either everyone having a phone or no one having a phone, they resoundingly say no phones. Kids really don't want these phones.
Wow.
They recognize how detrimental it is, but they feel like they are missing out. Of course, they don't want to be the only one without it. And you don't want your kid to be the only one without it, or I don't. Maybe some parents do. Like, I don't. But it's just so interesting that they've done this study multiple times. Multiple people have done it across multiple age groups, and they resoundingly say if nobody had phones, like that's what we would want. And so the reason I share that is because when you are setting boundaries for your kids, they appreciate them. As long as it's not ostracizing them, but kids need boundaries. They want boundaries, and we are in charge. We have to be the ones to set those boundaries. Like, screens are not going anywhere. We live in a digital world, and screens are always going to be a part of it, but we get to set the rules. We get to decide. And rather than thinking about it as like, punishing our kids, we have to understand that, like with all the things we teach them, they really benefit and enjoy having those boundaries set for them.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with you. That's a great piece to end on. It gives me a lot to think about. Good.
Yeah. All right. Well, this got a little heavier than, not heavy, but like it's a big topic. That's the thing. It's like, this is, I think what's so crazy is like so much of what we consume is so mindless, and yet the impact is so powerful. And there's like that sort of, that disconnect is really interesting. So hopefully, dear listeners, you've gained some insight. Hopefully you are walking away not judging any of the choices that you're making, because you can see the big spectrum that Briggs and I are on, which is, very, very different. Right. And hopefully we've given you some things to think about as you think about your own phone screen consumption, but also for your kids.
Exactly. Awesome.
All right, friend, you are amazing. And I hope you have an amazing day. And I will be back in your ears next week.